Hello everyone, Takuya here, and welcome back to the History of Everything podcast YouTube channel. If you can hear what I sound like right now, it's because I'm a little bit sick and I apologize, but I'm trying to get over it. So viewer Adderreal Volheim asked, here's a video idea. I'd love to know more about the largest attempted heists in medieval history. Well, get ready, dear audience, because this one is probably going to make your head hurt. Because this is the story of Richard of Pudlicot, the man who would steal the entirety of England's wealth. Simply known as Dick to his friends, Richard was a guy who was struggling. He could barely make ends meet. You see, he formerly worked as a clerk, so he had a fairly decent education, but that wasn't really helping him. And so by the year 1300, he had unfortunately been reduced down to being a simple wool merchant. And that was not something that he liked. But more so than simply being a wool merchant, he found that life was very unfair. He didn't like it. Why should the rich be rich? Why should they have all these great and nice things? Why should the nobility and the king, Edward I, why should they lord it over him? I mean, after all, a monarch enjoyed the finest things in life, the finest food, women, clothing, everything. All the while, the laborers and the merchants and everyone else toiled away. Now, despite these thoughts, every merchant knew that you didn't really want to cross the king, particularly Edward I, who was going to be ready to put things down as brutally as possible. However, everything seemed to change with the appearance of one man, Sir William Wallace of Scotland. When William Wallace rose up in the north, this diverted English attention that way. Edward, always a fairly militaristic king, decided that he was personally going to head up north and he was going to put down this rebellion in the Highlands. Now, Dick didn't really care about Scottish independence one way or another. It wasn't anything that necessarily affected him. But when he learned that nearly the entire English force had left England in order to go to Scotland, this started getting the gears in his head turning. And a kind of crazy idea really started to take shape. You see, Westminster Abbey, the literal heart of the English government, was going to be very lightly defended while the king was away. And Dick had heard incredible rumors about the vast amounts of wealth that was located at the innermost sanctums of this abbey. Reportedly, the abbey would even house Edward's wardrobe treasury, these being a collection of his personal armor, royal regalia, precious objects. It was a literal king's ransom, but only if he was going to be able to get to it in the first place. Now, of course, facing such a monumental task, Dick knew that he couldn't simply do this alone. So he bought out some Westminster guards, a few monks, a prison keeper, etc., just some people that would be able to help support him in his scheme. And by 1303, they were ready to launch the first phase of this operation. Richard arranged for the conspirators to bore through an outer wall, but they did recognize that they would need cover in order to do so. After all, you're not just going to be wandering around in the middle of the street while a whole team of men is working on breaking down a wall without saying anything. So what he did was solve this problem by scattering hemp seed around where they would be boring. After a few months, it had grown to such a large patch that this was going to obscure guards' view of, well, what was going on. Now, historians think that Richard made some progress into tunneling into the abbey, but not necessarily that that was the end-all be-all of the plan. Because after all, they don't have any actual proof that the hole was ever completed. I mean, digging is hard, especially when you're digging through the stone wall of a building. So more than likely what happened is that Dick managed to convince some of his colleagues on the inside to let him in. And so armed with a large key of rings and an expert knowledge of the layout of the abbey, they made their way inside. And once Richard and his compatriots reached the actual treasury, oh, their eyes bulged with the amount of treasure before them. All in all, the loot in front of them equated to approximately 1 year of tax revenue for the entirety of England. And Dick took all of it. He took Dick all. Shocked Westminster guards soon found the treasury was completely empty, and they knew when the king got back, oh, there was going to be hell to pay. A furious King Edward swore to hunt down each and every conspirator and punish them personally. Dick, all the meanwhile, was feeling pretty good about himself. Which, I mean, I guess is natural, as he was now quite literally the richest man in England. But rather than try to hide away his wealth or convert it into some means that wouldn't really draw attention to himself, Dick got a little bit ahead of himself. The cocky thieves sold and pawned off many of these one-of-a-kind treasures. It wasn't simply gold pieces. These were house objects, things that only belonged to the royal family, and they somehow had them in their possession. They would simply pawn them off in stores, or they would give them to friends as gifts, or anything of the sorts. Authorities were absolutely appalled to find that Westminster's precious objects were in brothels. Fishermen were miraculously catching gold coins in their nets, and with the treasures scattered all over London, Edward arrested each and every single person who could be close, even remotely involved in this. Which of course led them all back to Pudlicot, who, while promptly captured, did try to claim immunity as he was a former clerk. At the time, government officials in England couldn't actually be executed, so he thought that by giving himself in, that this would enable him to at least get away without too much punishment. He was wrong. He attempted to save his accomplices by telling authorities that he was the only one who had actually done anything, that he was doing it alone. But none of that helped him. In the year of our Lord 1304, Richard Puddleycott was hung for his crimes. Legend was, they nailed his flayed skin to the door of the abbey as a warning to others. Overall, in the end, Puddleycott really should have just been like, no, it wasn't me, what are you talking about? I just got gifted some of this stuff by some random guy. If he had simply taken his treasure and run, he would have been able to find any number of places, whether in France or in Flanders or in some other part of Europe with a vast amount of wealth, that he would have been able to settle down and live the rest of his life handsomely. But no, in the end, he was caught, hung, and very possibly flayed. So ends the story of England's dumbest and greatest thief, Richard of Puddleycott. Anyway, that is all for today. I hope that you all really enjoyed the episode. Please let me know down in the comment section below what it is that we should cover next, because I'm always taking suggestions from the comment section. Please forgive my voice, and anything you might hear on here is, again, I am a bit under the weather, and I do hope you all have a good rest of your day. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.